What's going on, man? Welcome back to the basement. I'm Ron, and we have the biggest draft weekend of the entire year here, Labor Day weekend. I know a lot of you guys have drafts tonight, tomorrow night, Monday night, so I wanted to hop on here and make sure you guys are as prepared as possible for these drafts. So we're going to give you guys a quick little update on all of the biggest player changes that I've made since my last rankings update. So we're going to talk about 5 players that are skyrocketing up my rankings. We're not going to waste any time. If you enjoy the video at any point, make sure you go down below, subscribe, and leave a like. Let's go.
Thirsty, thirsty, trying to choose. I know I'm critical. My nitty bag.
Now, before we get into any individual players, I know, again, you guys have your drafts tonight, tomorrow night, Monday night. And if you want to go out there and dominate your draft, make sure you check out patreon.com/Ron Stewart. You'll get my top 200 full PPR and half PPR rankings, my positional tiers, my ideal rounds, when to draft players, when to target them. You'll also get my in-season stuff. So this will last for the entirety of September. So what would that be? The first 3 weeks, you'll get my weekly rankings, my waiver wire, fab guidance, where I tell you how much % you should be bidding on each player. You get my rest of season rankings, all of that good stuff, and the exclusive Discord. So make sure you check out patreon.com/Ron Stewart. That'll be down below in the description and down below at the top of the comments. Let's talk about Tyreek Hill. And I've drafted him, 7.3% of my team. So the normal rate is 8.3%. So I'm like slightly below market on Tyreek Hill. And I moved him from my 301 as the wide receiver 10 to the 210 as the wide receiver 8. And this is one of the smaller jumps, but I think when we talk about these early rounds, a 3-pick jump, again, it's not a lot, but it's from early 3rd to late 2nd. And I wanted to give you guys an update on Tyreek Hill because I had him a little bit lower than people would have liked on the wide receiver tier list. And I've sort of not changed my mind, but I've adjusted a little bit on Tyreek Hill because I think I was being too harsh. I think I was factoring in Tua too much. He feels like a discount Devontae Adams. Well, the reason why I like Devontae Adams over Diggs is because I feel like Devontae Adams is a more talented wide receiver. And as much as Derek Carr and a new offense is going to hold him back, I think above all else, I want to be betting on talent. And that's kind of what we're looking at with Tyreek Hill. And not only that, but Devontae Adams, you're not really getting a discount, right? He's still a first-round pick. We're getting Tyreek Hill at a pretty big discount. I think if it wasn't for him changing scenery, he'd be a 1-2 turn pick. We're now getting him at the 2-3 turn, which is pretty rare for Tyreek Hill, who hasn't been going in this area for, like 2, 3, 4 years. And it's not like he's fallen off, right? He's going to be 28 this year, which is like slightly concerning. But he still looked good in reception perception, right? 93rd percentile versus press, 90th percentile versus zone, 83rd percentile versus man. Killed it across the board. He also set a career high in target share last year at 25.1%. Now, he wasn't amazing. He was a little bit of a letdown last year, but he just had a down year in efficiency, which is a little bit spooky at this point in his career, right? He's about to be, or he is 28, but we're kind of seeing the same thing with Stephon Diggs, where Stephon Diggs had a down year in efficiency, and we're just expecting him to bounce back. Now, obviously, he has Josh Allen and the Bills, but I'm comparing him to Stephon Diggs because he's not out of his prime. We can expect an efficiency bounce back, and that's in the range of outcomes for Tyreek Hill. Now, it's definitely a little bit risky, right, because he is a little bit older. You're coming off a down efficiency year. He could take a little bit of a step back, but I wouldn't pencil it in for that. I think that there's still a very good chance that he is still Tyreek Hill and that this offense isn't – it's not that people think that this offense is going to be bad, but I think there might be a little bit too much pessimism on Tua. And Tua is somebody that I haven't loved, but I think this offense with Mike McDaniel and Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle – I think there's going to be more efficiency from this offense than we think. And I don't think that even if Tua is a bad quarterback, he's going to hold back this offense. I've kind of been thinking through it this year, and I don't think that even if you have an average quarterback, that he'll hold you back as an offense, right? Where we've seen Kirk Cousins support 2 top 24 wide receivers with like Jefferson and Adam Thielen. We've seen even guys like Jameis Winston. We've seen guys like Fitzpatrick with Brandon Marshall and Eric Decker on my Jets. Blake Bortles with Allen Robinson and Allen Hurns. I almost feel like as long as you're not a terrible quarterback, right? Like a rookie quarterback like Trevor Lawrence last year, or just any of the Jets years with like Sam Darnold on the Panthers last year, as long as you're not a bottom 5 quarterback, I do believe that you have like the Aaron Rodgers of the world, the Russell Wilsons, the Patrick Mahomes that elevate their offense, right? Where they improve efficiency. But I think there's also a pretty big tier of quarterbacks that don't improve efficiency, but they also don't take away from the offense, right? As long as the playmakers are good enough, they can support that. Same thing with Alex Smith and Tyreek Hill, right? Where Alex Smith was out there with Tyreek Hill, and Tyreek Hill was the wide receiver 7 in just his 2nd season with Alex Smith on the Chiefs. So I say that to say that I don't think that Tua, I don't know why my voice like cracked there, but I don't think that he's bad enough to hold back the offense. And we have some positive news, and I don't love buying into preseason, but Tyreek Hill, obviously all-time deep threat, and this is his all-time longest completions from Scott Barrett. And we can see Mahomes, 53 air yards, 51 air yards, 49 air yards. So just, on his longest completions, how long is the ball traveling in the air? And he had a catch in preseason. Again, it's preseason, but Tua threw the ball 48 yards in the air. That's not Mahomes level, right, where Mahomes is 49, 51, 53, but it's not terrible. And Tua threw this ball kind of off balance. So for as much as people think that he doesn't have a big arm, and I'm not saying he has a big arm, but I think it'll be serviceable, right? Like Alex Smith that year on the Chiefs, and, he kind of had a tendency to air it out. When you have Waddle and you have Tyreek Hill, two downfield playmakers, or even guys who can go with the line of scrimmage and get yak points, I think that he will be able to support them. I don't think that he's going to be the reason that they're, top 12 to top 24 wide receivers, but I don't think he'll hold them back necessarily, is kind of where I've landed on with Tyreek Hill. Now, I want to talk about his Dolphins teammate here, Raheem Mostert, real quick. Raheem Mostert, I had him as my 1406 as the RB59. I now have him as the 1110 as the RB49. So that's 3 rounds ahead and like 10 running back spots. And this is because they cut Sony Michel. So the Dolphins cut Sony Michel, and this makes Mostert a lot more interesting than I previously thought. And Mike Clay just did a fresh batch of projections here. And he has Mostert projected for the lead in carries and the lead in rushing touchdowns, despite being only projected for 13 games to Chase Edmonds' 15. So if we're going to get in the double-digit rounds, the lead back on this Dolphins team that's going to be schemed up by Mike McDaniel, who already has previous experience with Raheem Mostert, I think that's really interesting. Now, obviously, I don't think that he's going to be amazing, but we're talking about RB40-ish here, and he's going to be the favorite to lead this backfield in carries on a team that's going to install a Kyle Shanahan-ian type running scheme. I think that's interesting. He should have a couple games for you where it's going to be like, 10, 11, 12 carries and like 100 yards and a touchdown. I think in this range, that's interesting. I'll also say with Michel being gone, which is a surprise cut, right, where they had Myles Gaskin and Salvin Ahmed, I think Myles Gaskin is also somebody worth rostering at this point. I added him to the rankings for the first time this year. I really don't mind him. Like, if we're talking like deep, high stakes, 20-round leagues, I think he's a fine, 17th, 18th, 19th round pick in that format. Next guy we're going to talk about, Chris Godwin. I only fit 5.2% of him, but that's because I was fading him early on. I'm starting to draft him more now that we've gotten more positive news. But during my last update, I had him as my 505 as the wide receiver 30. I now have him as my 405 as the wide receiver 24. And I want to talk about kind of the most recent update that I've gotten from a doctor on Chris Godwin's ACL. That's really all it comes down to. If it wasn't for the ACL, he'd be around 2-3 turn guy. And this is a blurb from Dr. Edwin Porras on Fantasy Points. And it's a long blurb, but we're going to read it all. He said, per Greg Allman of The Athletic, Chris Godwin is still in a no-contact jersey as expected. And from a big-picture logical perspective, it wouldn't make sense for the first time to take on contact to be in an NFL game. I don't know why I can't read. Of course, there's no way to know exactly what a team's plans are, and Godwin still has over a week to shed that jersey. However, as stated over a month ago, his avoidance of the pup did not preclude his Week 1 status as the only modern example of a pass catcher returning to NFL game action at 8 months post-op is Rob Gronkowski. Gronk played just 52% of snaps and averaged 11 PPR points per game for the first month until he ramped up and finished as the equivalent of wide receiver 9 on a points per game basis. Still, Godwin could be a massive value in drafts this year, as he will certainly be ramped up by November. He does not come without risk, but his overall profile fits the mold of an outlier wide receiver who can smash his ADP in the first year back from ACL reconstruction. So that's not even necessarily super, super positive, but it seems like at this point, he should be good to go for Week 1. Will it be a full serving of routes? Probably not, but I think that's fine, right? I'm the type of guy that we talk a lot about drafting wide receivers because they sort of backload their points. And if you can buy Chris Godwin on a discount because he's not going to score points early, but he's going to score points late in the money-making rounds like playoffs and, where we get our buy-ins back, where we get our prize money, I think that's a worthwhile investment on a guy, again, who should be a 2-3 round turn guy, but we're getting him at a discount. As long as we sort of draft, our wide receivers through the flex +2 through round 10, we don't necessarily need Chris Godwin right out the gates. I think that he's somebody worth drafting for the end. You're making a bet on this offense that's going to be really good. He's probably going to be the lead for targets if he stays healthy the entire 17 games. At this point, he's a top 24 wide receiver for me. He's somebody I have on a few teams by now, but he's someone I want to target even more. Now, moving on, we're going to talk about the man of the hour, that, to be honest with you guys, I probably should have put him as like the first guy in this video. But we have Dameon Pierce. And I actually have a good little bit of him. I have 7.7% exposure to him, which was, again, 8.3% is normal. But 7.7% is right about there. And this was all from when he was a double-digit round pick. Now, I didn't love Dameon Harris in Dynasty. But Dameon Harris, the rookie, in a Texans backfield competing with Marlon Mack and Rex Burkhead, was a fine investment when he was like pick 120. I've moved him from pick 1003 as the RB42 to 707 as the RB28. And that's the issue. So Royce Freeman and Marlon Mack were cut. I moved him way up, RB28, and here's the issue. On Underdog, he's RB24. We've been in a couple high-stakes drafts on this channel where he goes in the 4th round, Dameon Pierce. So this is the issue. I'm in. I think that he's fine in that 7th round area. I have him right there with like the Ramondre Stevensons, the Rashad Pennys, the Clyde Edwards-Helaire's, you know, guys who are going to be lead backs with some juice. Really, the only issue I have is the people who are taking it too far in drafting him in the 5th, 6th round. At that point, we're getting into dead zone territory. We're passing up on too many good profiles at wide receiver. I can't take Pierce that high. So again, if he goes like 7, as soon as it hits 7th round, I think Pierce is a fine pick. But again, I've seen him 4th, 5th, 6th round. I haven't been able to get him since his price increased. The reason why I wouldn't take him in the 6th round, again, because the opportunity cost, right? So there's wide receivers in that range. And at the end of the day, he's on the Texans. He ran a 4.59, so he's not going to create an insane amount of efficiency on his own. And he doesn't catch passes. So Rex Burkhead will be the satellite back. He'll be the between the tackles grinder on the Texans. He kind of feels like almost like David Montgomery, right? Who goes in like the 6th round, 5th round. I think that he's more of a 7th. Pierce might fall there in home leagues. People aren't really familiar with Pierce, but he has really gotten a really loud drumbeat at this point. So just stay cautious on Dameon Pierce. Again, I moved him up 3 rounds. I did move him up, but I'm just saying pump the brakes ever so slightly on 4th round, 5th round, 6th round. Dameon Pierce. Then the last guy we're going to talk about today, J.D. Mckissic. He goes from the 14-10 in my rankings as the RB63 to the 11-09 as the RB48. And, of course, we have the sad story where Brian Robinson gets shot. He now has to, like, miss minimum 5 weeks, which really sucks for him. And honestly, dude, it's actually so sad. A guy who, 5th-year senior at Alabama, had to back up Josh Jacobs, Najee Harris, finally has 1 year of good production, sort of lucks into day 3 draft capital, leapfrogs Gibson before even week 1. A really cool story. Sucks that, you know, gets this big setback, but in terms of fantasy, I moved up Mckissic, and it's not really that Mckissic is going to get a bigger role right out the gate, but it makes this committee from a 3-man backfield to a 2-man backfield. And I still expect him to have all of the passing down work and still mix in between the tackles, but why I moved him up is his contingent value really increases, where if Antonio Gibson was to go down prior to Brian Robinson's injury, then Brian Robinson would probably just absorb those between the tackles carries, and it would just become a 2-man committee. But if Antonio Gibson goes down and Brian Robinson's not good to go, we get all-purpose J.D. Mckissic, which is really interesting. We have 2 games of that sample, or a sample of 2 games over the last 2 seasons where J.D. Mckissic played in games without Antonio Gibson, and he goes from 4 rush attempts per game to 12, from 18 rush yards per game to 60. He goes from 11.3 points per game to 18.1. That's really interesting, where we get a guy that, you know, he's going to give us our almost like a budget Nyheim Hines of like 11 points per game. And if something was to happen to Gibson, we then get a really startable handcuff that is even more advantageous in full PPR. Now, that's going to do it for us today. I told you guys it was going to be a quick one. I just wanted to give you guys a nice little rapid fire. I know a lot of you guys expect me to sort of hop on here, give you guys the most detailed breakdowns possible, but we're getting so close to the season that I do want to hop on here and just make some quick updates for the people. Now, again, you guys have drafts coming up. These rankings, by the way, are fresh off the press. I literally just updated them on Friday. So today's Saturday, literally fresh off the press yesterday. We're going to be doing a high-stakes draft tonight with those rankings. So make sure, if you want to go out there and dominate your drafts, I'm old school myself. I use my own rankings. I would make them regardless if I didn't have a channel. I'm old school. I cross them off as I go in every draft I'm in. So if you want pretty much what I go into every draft with, it'll be right there, patreon.com/Ron Stewart. Hope you guys all have a nice Saturday. Hope we're all enjoying college football, hanging out with the fellas, drafting teams this weekend. So with that being said, I'll leave you guys to it. If you enjoyed, make sure you go down below, subscribe, leave a like, and I will see you guys in the next one.
I got the juice, I got the juice.
Channel, Chatham's on. Foolies glad I'm home. Even my haters kinda glad I'm on. Rest in peace to my vagabond. Rapper, song, singer, suspended, subpoena from misdemeanors.